Welcome, dear friends. It's so good to be with you all to have another conversation. So thankful for taking this time to stay with me as we talk about something that we are all feeling, the feeling of isolation. And no matter where you are in the world, this is a common feeling that we all share together. These feelings, I want you to know, arises from the situation we find ourselves in our journey in life. Currently, some of you may be unemployed, some of you may be underemployed, or some of you are forced to go into a job where you don't feel safe because of the exposure outside. You don't feel insulated enough to be exposed, or you have lost somebody in your own life, in your family or your friends, and you feel like the threat has come so close to you that there is a sense of feeling of frustration. And these feelings of frustration, feelings of are accompanied with feelings of anger, profound sadness, loneliness, but most oftentimes a frustration of our own needs. And I want to remind you that we as human beings, God created us with human needs like physiological needs and psychological needs like need for affirmation, self-esteem, a sense of belonging, and all these things. God created us so that we will experience community, and the community affirms, and our families affirm and meet these needs. And somehow, when those are threatened, you find yourself isolated. And so this morning, I have a hunch or a feeling that God has allowed this time in our lives to stop from to give us that space where we can examine what is going on inside of us. And I think it's so important for us because I think even Socrates, a Greek philosopher, once said, "Know thyself. The greatest pursuit of human life is human being, and as a person is to know yourself." And when you begin to discover yourself, you can, if you want to journey with God, you first discover yourself, and then you will realize there will come out of that an awareness of who God is. And it was the Spanish mystic Saint Teresa of Avila who said, our soul, which often connects with God and with others, our soul is like a diamond with many facets. And I think what she was meaning was, it's like a diamond that has many small mansions. I think drawing from the analogy that Jesus said, "In my Father's house there are many mansions, and I'm going to take you there." So her journey towards God was a journey towards knowing herself, to go to her true self, where the true self reflects the image of God, rather than a false self that is often projected by the human self, which is often based on what we want other people to know about us. It is we want others to know that we are rich, we are famous, we are we are good, we are somebody special, and we want to feel significance out of the things that we do in life, and the wealth we have created, the education and the accomplishments that somehow gives us a projected false image about ourselves. And so in this journey, I think of discovering our true self, and often it's the frustrations are caused because we have unsatisfied and unmet needs of our projected self, what we want others to know about ourselves. So this is a beautiful song, an ancient song that I want to place before you to help us. And this is something that it's like listening to a song. You don't want to sit and study a song just to understand it psychologically or intellectually. You want to experience the song. You want to stand before nature and experience nature rather than trying to dissect nature all the time. I know there is a time and a place for that, but this is a song that a journey that I'm inviting you to take by reading the Psalm 42 and 43, which is one long Hebrew song that was written probably by somebody in exile. And my hunch is he was a worship leader in the way that he has written it, as well as some of the things that comes out of it. So as we look into the psalm, we are going to find some clues of what is causing this feelings of frustration, of feelings of profound depression. And when the frustrations are not addressed, after a while, this anger and sadness you feel is turned inwards, and it causes what I would call the flatness of soul, which is medically they would call it as depression. The soul is prostrated and flat and has no energy from within. It is a feeling of deadness inside. And so you want to look at the psalm and see what is causing this. And he gives some clues to what are some of the reasons and some of the feelings and symptoms that are expressing itself. And then finally, he gives kind of a response that he is taking to defeat and overcome his depressed feeling. So I want to begin by looking at some of the clues. I think the first clue that we find as we read the psalm, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul within thirsts for God, for the living God, not any God that appears to be God and has no life, just a blob sitting there. But the real God who gives life and the living God, when can I go and meet with God? So the experience of isolation, first of all, is a kind of a personal isolation that he feels, because he feels connected to the person, and somehow the person is distant. And that's why he says, when can I meet with my God? And it's something that the person is missing terribly at this time and wants to be reconnected again. And for those of you who don't believe in God, maybe it's something that you miss right now. Maybe it's your work that is this important thing in your life that you desperately miss and long for and want to get back and connected so that you can feel the sense of significance that comes out of that work. But it's missing someone or something that has been separated. The second isolation I think he feels is the physical isolation, because he says here in verse 4, these things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I used to go with multitudes leading the procession to the house of God. So here is a guy who is being separated, violently taken by King Nebuchadnezzar as he captured Jerusalem and took the people of Judah to Babylon to become slaves. And here they are. They find themselves physically separated from their home, their hometown, their home community. And I often think of the migrant workers right now who are from different countries, who are in India, from different parts of the states, and longing to go back home, because home is where their heart belongs to. And there is a sense of frustration when the need for safety and security is threatened. And that's what the psalmist is experiencing here. Oh, I belong to Jerusalem, where the city of God is, where the house of God is. And here am I, look at me, I'm physically isolated. Maybe some of you feel that. Maybe it's your workplace that you are longing to go back. Maybe it's your church that you're waiting for the doors to be opened so that you can be again in the house of God, because you think that's where the house of God is. The third kind of isolation I think he feels is the isolation of social isolation. It's not social distancing, or maybe it is, but it's a kind of, if you notice this sign says, because the people here are oppressing me, saying, where is your God now, as you are in exile? and he doesn't feel welcome. He wants to go back where multitudes, his community, the multitudes that he sings and leads procession, that's a sense of community that he is longing for, that he is missing here for some reason or another. And we do miss that. We are socially isolated from the communities, especially families and extended families and friend circles that are really gives us a great bit of joy in our lives. And we are in a situation where we are isolated, and these things are producing certain types of feelings, which is what we want to look at. These feelings are erupting, and first is the feeling is crying. He says in verse 3, my tears have been my food day and night. My tears have been my food day and night. Simply what he means is, I feel like the word there, let me throw the Hebrew word there for dimati, literally means sobbing and crying, because you find yourself helpless and you terribly miss something. So crying is that feeling of separation, and you feel helpless, and sobbing and crying to a point from morning to night. You keep crying and you forget even to eat. That's how tears become your food. The loss of appetite that one feels when you are depressed and you feel so alone. The second feeling is a feeling of fatigue. He says in verse 3, why are you downcast, O my soul? Why so disturbed within me? The word downcast, tishto kahi, in Hebrew literally means to feel prostrated, to feel cast down, to feel deflated, to feel flat. There's no passion, there's no enthusiasm to do anything. There is just a feeling of down in the dump. When you're heartbroken, sometimes you feel that. And some of you who have been heartbroken with relationships, you know that, how it's an empty feeling. It's just a feeling of total emptiness, no energy, nothing from within to motivate you to do anything. The third kind of feeling is disturbed, deeply disturbed. Why are you so disturbed within me? The word disturbed there, watehimi, literally means to growl like an animal, to roar like an animal that is longing for food, or an incoherent murmuring of somebody who has become so withdrawn and who feels alone. And I've seen my sister do that. In her deep depression, sometimes she talks to herself because she thinks nobody else is there, and you withdraw so much from the outside society and community that you go into a deep state of loneliness, and you begin to mumble and fumble to yourself as though you are grumbling. The fourth feeling that he experiences is body ache. It says in verse 10, my bones suffer mortal agony as my foes taunt me day and night long. My bones suffer more. There's murder in my bones. In other words, it's like sticking knives into my joints and bones. That's the pain I feel. In fact, the Greeks thought that melancholia is produced because of excessive bile, black bile, that the spleen and kidney produce for various chemical needs, the hormones, and the body is unable to regulate, and therefore the excessive production of this is what causes melancholia, which in other words, this leaks from the gut into our system, and it goes all the way into the joints and joints of the body, causing inflammation and pain. And how true that is. In this writer, he says, my bones are aching. The next feeling he is experiencing is feeling of overwhelm. Feeling overwhelmed. Verse 7 says, deep calls to deep in the roar of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have swept over me. It's like literally the word deep there. It means, let me throw that word, Hebrew word, tehom. Tehom literally means terror experience because of chaos, and that the terror that was there on the face of the earth when God created, and it says everything was formless and there was primeval chaos, there was disorder, and it's like being submerged into an ocean and you feel like you are suspending and falling, and everything, you feel overwhelmed. That's the feeling that sometimes depression brings. And then finally, rejection. And this is so powerful here as we read the words of the psalmist, as he says, I say to God, verse 9 of chapter 42, Psalm 42, I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go mourning, oppressed by the enemy? Again in verse 2 of Psalm 43, you are my God, my stronghold. Why have you rejected me? Why must I go out mourning? So here is the feeling of rejection and dejection, because of which he is mourning and feeling profound sadness because he feels rejected. The God who is supposed to be the rock of his life has moved and shifted. That's the feeling that, God, you just moved and you are the stronghold of my life, and now you have taken your grip away, and I feel you have forsaken me. You have forsaken me. It's a sense of feeling of forsakenness. I don't think anybody knows that better than our Lord Jesus Christ, who upon that cross, he cried out for a moment of separation that he experienced. My God, Abba, why have you forsaken me? He understands the feelings of being forsaken. And here is he saying, God, why are you withholding your love? Why have you taken your grip away from me, that I feel, so helpless at the moment? The need for belonging, the need for safety and security. It's a God-given need that God alone is supposed to fulfill that need within us. And so the normal response to this is usually mask and hide. So our normal response would be, when we have this kind of feelings, would be to go into that safe masking mode of, oh, it's okay, I'm okay, I'm doing well, oh, of course I'm doing well. You tend to rely on your position and your wealth and your power, and you begin drinking because you want to numb that pain, and we begin to hide behind substances. We begin to hide behind the pride and prestige of our lives, the position, but you're lonely as a leader. You're lonely at the top, but you have your position that you're resting upon, and somehow COVID has exposed all this and laid it bare. That's where we are in our journey, and the psalmist suggests that there is a way to defeat this depression. And here's the first thing he says: examine the present. Examine. He said, sit with yourself and ask these questions. Why? Why art thou downcast, O my soul? Why are you so disturbed? Where is this fear coming from? Where is this fear rooted in? Why is such disturbance within? Where are these fears coming from? What are you really afraid of? And as you begin to ask these questions, why, you begin to own your feeling by admitting that there are needs that are unmet. See, you begin by asking this question, why, you are bringing the exasperation of frustration you're feeling inside and bring it out. You are surfacing the anger rather than repressing and suppressing and submerging the anger that you feel inside. Rather, you are bringing it out, and it becomes cathartic. It becomes a venting of your feelings of anger, which is a good thing, rather than suppressing and freezing A frozen rage is what depression is. So he says, sit with yourself. Take the time to sit with yourself each day and examine what is going on. Let there be this self-examination and ventilation of these feelings of these false image of ourselves and the feelings erupting. So the second thing that he says is to cherish the past. He says, I remember. These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I used to go to the multitudes. In the midst of these isolated feeling, I'm going to remember those nostalgic moments in my life where people who added value to me, who gave me worth, which for him was God. I remember those days when I would used to joyfully go with my community before God, and he affirmed me. And he says, leading to the procession with shouts of joy and thanksgiving. He's reliving. See, when you relive your memory, like for example, when I feel sad sometimes of the loss of my mother, I think of the good memories with her, and suddenly she comes alive before me. That's what awareness does. When you become aware of the times when God had come through in your life, when he had provided for you, when he had protected you, and when he gave you the right words to speak in a meeting, or when he helped solve a problem, or when he gave you wisdom to make good decisions and good choice, you want to remember those sacred moments, those nostalgic moments in your life. But the only thing worse than nostalgia is amnesia, is to forget those markers, those milestones in your life which has defined your life and which gives identity to who you are. You are God's beloved, and you want to remember that as often as you can. In the midst of feeling lonely and separate, you're not. You go back to your true self and remember those memories. The third thing he finally says is to practice God's presence. He says here in verse, I think it's verse 8, that says, by day the Lord directs his love towards me. By day, as I sit with him, I feel the love of God directed towards me. I feel loved. I feel that I am his beloved. And he carries that thread of awareness, that unbroken thread of awareness all the way to the night when he says, in the night it comes like a song of lullaby, where God says, rest my son, my daughter, in my arms, sleep well. For the Lord gives sleep to those whom he loves, who know how to experience and bask in his love. They are quiet and still at night. They sleep well. They have nothing to prove to anyone or to anybody. So that is learning the art of being in God's presence, practicing God's presence, where he says in verse 3, he says, send forth your light and your truth. Let them guide me. Let them bring me to your holy mountain, to the place where you dwell. Then I will go to the altar of God, and to God, my joy, my delight. I will praise you with harp. Oh God, my God. Here is where, when he sits and practices God's presence with God's word begins to pour truth into our lives, begins to expose our false image of ourselves, and takes us back to the wonderful true image of who we are, the reflection of God's own nature. You are God's child. You are not just an employee you are not what you do in your life. You are who God says who you are, the beloved of God, and you have to practice this so that you may remember that your source of identity and sense of identity is always communion with God. You're never alone when you begin this journey of being with God. And may God bless you and keep you. May He shine His face upon you, and may He be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance towards you as you sit in His presence and receive the identity of who you are. It is not what you do in life, it is who you are that matters, that adds value to you. May God bless you.